Welcome to The Pilgrim, the podcast for Jesus followers like you who wants tips and advice to grow their faith in the ups and downs of journeying through this world. I am O.O. Living and I'm your host. What does it mean to live for Christ? How do we know if or when we are truly living for Him? When Paul wrote the book of Philippians, he was in prison in Rome awaiting a potential death sentence for his gospel ministry. In this book, Paul says one of the most quoted verses in the Bible. He said in Philippians chapter 1 verse 20 to 21, I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. With this statement, Paul takes us into the very heart of the Christian faith. For Paul, the ultimate meaning of his life and our lives is to bring honor to Christ. Life meant one thing: magnify Christ, glorify Christ, make much of Christ, both in living and dying. God created all things to make much of Christ and make him look great as he really is. That is what it means to live for Christ. Let me unpack. I recently read of a basketball player that owned a t-shirt that said, quote, life is basketball and the rest is details, end quote. The idea behind the phrase on the t-shirt was that basketball was the primary focus of life and everything else really didn't matter. How many of us have that kind of phrase and live like that? Yours may not be basketball or anything related to sports, but you do have your own. It is very telling in the way you live what is the greatest priority in your life. It is sad that little reflection is given to our relationship with Christ. Our Christianity only ends in the church. The Christian life for you is simple. Christ is just a part of your life. It's not everything, and you don't seem to bother. I think this is the idea behind Paul's statement. For me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. Paul is saying that everything is to him. He's saying that his life is for Christ. His fame is his aim. His name he will proclaim. For many of us, we know this verse by heart, but we don't know it in practice. For many of us, Christ is not our life. For us, life is school, life is family, life is career, or life is some hobby or entertainment. As one author said, quote, life is what we are alive to, end quote. It is what really gets us excited, what really gets us going, and what keeps us motivated and inspired. That is what life is to us. Life is what we are alive to. So what are you alive to? That is your life. For many of us, and this is really sad, our passion lies outside of our relationship with Christ. What does it really mean to live for Christ? Have you really thought of the question? Have you really asked yourself that question? What does it really mean to live for Jesus? Jesus said this was the very reason that he came into this world. He came that we might have life and have it abundantly. He came so that we could truly be alive to God, that he would be our passion and joy and happiness. Paul had found this life and he constantly proclaimed it. In Galatians 2 verse 20, and this is one of my life verses, he said, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Paul saw himself as no longer alive to himself. He left his past life behind, and now Christ was his life and Christ alone. His life began when he was blinded on his way to Damascus, and he became a follower of Jesus. Later in Philippians chapter 3, he was recounting all the former things he took pride in, his Jewish upbringing, following the law and being a Pharisee, and yet he says he counts all as worthless for the sake of gaining Christ. Christ was the beginning of Paul's life, and getting to know Christ more was the continuation of his life. And one day dying could be better, because and some translations say dying would be gain. That dying is gain. That's what Paul said. To die is gain. One day dying would be better, because that would mean enjoying Christ in greater fellowship and deeper intimacy. That is what our hearts long for most. That is what we really desire. So I ask, is Christ your life? Is he your daily passion? Is he your hope for the future? Is he the center of your everyday life? What is your life? What are you really living for? Is it success? Is it wealth? Is it financial prosperity? Is it career success? Is it comfort? Or is it family, or a combination of all these and more? If so, you will not be able to say dying is even better or dying is gain, because to die would really be the loss of all that you're truly living for. Little wonder you dread the thoughts of dying. You dread the thoughts of death. Paul said, I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For because he knows that his life will bring honor to Christ, because for him living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. Paul knew. Do you know if your life will bring honor to Christ? And the way you know that your life will bring honor to Christ is because you are living for Christ. So here's the way I would say it, by putting together both dying is even better and living means living for Christ. Christ is most honored in our lives when we are most satisfied in him than in what we lose in death and what we have in life. I'm excited about this. Christ is most honored. In both cases, the goal of Paul's life, what it meant for him to live for Christ, is attained when Christ is magnified in his life, whether by life or by death. That is what it means to live for Jesus. Paul's life teaches us one thing. Live your life in such a way that when you come to die, Christ will be more precious than life. That is what it means to live for Christ. Because the key to glorifying Christ in life and in death is to find him more precious, more valuable, more satisfying, more joyous, more gain-worthy than everything we lose in death. Dying is even better. That's it. And everything we have in life, living means living for Christ. And so we come to the end of today's episode on the podcast. Thank you for listening. If Paul says to live means living for Christ, and dying is even better. What does he mean? That's what we'll look at in the next episode. See you next time. I remain your host, OO Living.